Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and lock your headphones and let the magic begin.
Apostasy by Deydralinne. Chapter 37, A Pattern in Gold. What are we even looking for? Pansy sighed, pulling more books from the shelves and opening them for her. Apparently, Cantankerous Knot really went hard on the purist's beliefs. Hermione couldn't touch anything in the manor without running the risk of having her face blasted off from being muggle-born. Hermione skimmed the page and shook her head. Anything that mentioned a greengrass ancestor. The pages turned, and again Hermione scanned for the keywords, letting out a frustrated cry. This is useless. I need to compare them to the greengrass records to even know what I'm doing or looking for. Well, what do you want me to do then, Hermione? Pansy asked patiently. Hermione had been snapping more as her agitations had grown, but the witch had remained level-headed and calm. Hermione shrugged and scrubbed at her face with her hands. She wanted to sit. Her legs were tired from standing, but she had been warned that if she sat, then she would likely be bound to a chair and killed slowly. I don't know. I can't think and work under these conditions. Hermione looked around. The pile of books that she had requested Pansy to get her sat in piles spanning across two full-sized tables. Even under better circumstances, this would take forever to comb through. The fancy lab that Renaud gave me, could we take these books there, where I can sit and see without something trying to kill me? Pansy tilted her head. I will need Theo for that. The Knot family has always been particular about their belongings. I can help here, but I don't think I can remove a book from the premises, anti-theft wards and whatnot. Hermione sighed heavily and looked at the ceiling. Okay, well, leave these books here on the table for now. Theo can come and get them once we know Tor has stabilized. Greengrass Estate. Will they try to kill me too? Hermione groaned. Pansy chuckled. No, the Greengrass family had never been quite the openly raging cunts the Knots or Malfoys were. We could probably move those books to the lab without issue. Daphne added me to the family wards after her dad died, so it should recognize me all right. After her dad, Hermione trailed off, realizing it was not her business. Even in the wizarding world, it's not commonly accepted to take a same-sex partner. Families have daughters to raise to be someone's wife, to be an incubator for their husband's heir. Can hardly do that if my husband lacks the equipment to put a baby in me. Daphne's father would never have disinherited Daphne for it, especially when he still had Astoria to do her duty. But he never approved of me or my relationship with his daughter, romantically speaking. Hermione hummed in disapproval. It seemed abhorrent, but then again, many things in pureblood circles seemed that way. All of it justified in the name of keeping their bloodlines pure. You never wanted children, Hermione cried. Pansy shrugged. As I said before, I would have done my duty and had them and played the part, but it hardly matters now that I am openly lesbian. Neither Daphne nor I, but you could use a donor. Perhaps a certain wizard couple feels the same way, that they have also dismissed it as being a non-option. Pansy's laughter bounced off the walls of the library. Are you suggesting I proposition the fucking minister to see if he wants to what, go halves in a child? Her black hair bounced as she shook her head. Hermione snorted. No, I am saying you have options. It doesn't have to be the case of, oh well, I'm gay, so it was never in the cards for me. There are plenty of clinics in the Muggle world that help same-sex couples have babies. Why should it be any different here? I imagine that once the secret is out, having a half-blood baby will be something that is widely sought out, Hermione grumbled with some bitterness, despite it being an aspect of her plan. She hated the idea that having a magical child would be something that would become a trend, but she could also see how it would benefit the wizarding population. If it was a highly popular trend, the number of magical population would skyrocket within a year, maybe doubling or even tripling the number of magical beings. As it was, the magical population was dwindling. Every year they came closer and closer to extinction as one family merged with another, especially in cases where their parents had only one child, like the Malfoys. or even in the cases they hadn't. Sirius had no children, nor did Regulus. Their line had died. Their cousins had been girls, Narcissa having had only Draco, Bellatrix having had no children at all, and Andromeda having only Tonks. The entire Black line had shrunk to rest entirely on Teddy's shoulders as Draco had taken over the Malfoy line. And even then, Teddy wasn't a proper Black. He was a Lupin. His inheritance, should he receive one day, would be in the most of technical terms. If he grew up to have children, they would be Lupins too. So then the Black family truly will have died out. How many generations did they have to go before the options for purebloods were limited to 2 or 3 people? The wizarding race would be extinct in practically no time at all if they didn't look at a much larger picture, which is where the notion that people would jump at the chance of having a half-blood was definitely more practical. Hermione followed Pansy back to the flow. Hermione wasn't sure why she expected light and airy decor when stepping into the Greengrass residence. She had been told that they had all been raised in dark, bleak households, but in her mind, she had separated the Greengrass sisters from that. Alas, the walls were just as dark, drenched in blacks and shades of brown, with the occasional red accent, though it did feel decidedly less sinister than the Knott family estate. This time, Hermione was able to at least touch the old journals, the ancestral grimoires, and the books on the Sacred 28, which made the whole process go a lot faster. She anticipated that the hard part would be entering the research facility, which was something she had yet to do, but as they apparated to the front of the building, huge and modern in its design, she felt the wards shimmer in recognition of her. Pansy was a different story. Being unable to pass through initially the security measure, while normally reassuring, slowed them down while they attempted to figure it out. "Is it a blood ward?" Pansy asked her from the other side. Hermione reached out to the words and shimmered in her hands. "No. Maybe try declaring your intent," Hermione suggested. Pansy gave her a look like it was the stupidest idea she had ever heard. "I intend to assist Hermione Granger and mean her in her research no harm," Pansy said, her palm flat on the other side of the word. Sure enough, a light green glow rippled through it, and Pansy fell forward, obviously having been leaning against the ward outside. Hermione let out a victorious cry of laughter. "And you didn't think that would work?" Pansy glowered at her and waved at her to lead the way. Hermione had never had the doors of a building open upon her arrival before. She'd seen it previously in some older wizarding families, but it was a pretty spectacular feeling to have it happen to her now as they approached the front of the lab. As she walked in, the room began shifting and shaping to her needs. "Oh, shut the fuck up," Hermione beamed, looking around as the walls shifted and separated into 3 different rooms. In one, the walls turned to bookshelves, desks in varying shades of gray popped up out of the floor, lamps in the center of each one. In another room, steel counters with beakers and medical equipment appeared, glass tubes lining cabinets, needles in a neat row on the sterile tray. The last room looked to be a small kitchen, which appeared to be fully stocked, a reminder to eat and not get lost in her research. Pansy started dumping the books into the tables from the extended purse she had shoved them all into at the Greengrass estate, causing the reality of their situation to come crashing back down on her. Hermione took a deep breath and started separating the books into piles. Journals at one table, old family grimoires at another, and pure blood records at yet another table. Hermione sunk into one of the chairs and pulled the first book towards her. The book was a history of the family. It was Hermione's hope that she would be able to go back through and figure out when the curse actually started. "Hey, Mai," Pansy asked softly, "are you okay here if I head back to the hospital? I was going to stay, but no one knows you're here, and the wards will keep anyone out that doesn't belong." Pansy's concern over Astoria's condition was understandable. Hermione nodded and smiled at the witch. "Of course, go on. I'll be there later." And so, for the first time in months, maybe even years, Hermione was left on her own, truly alone. There was no one else downstairs, no one in the next room over making a cup of tea, and the emptiness around her was heavy. The lamps were lit across all the tables, and they provided a soft yellow glow to the room. It would have been easy to fall back into an old habit of researching and studying if not for the fact that Astoria's life hung in the balance. There was something about Astoria's sudden bout happening directly after Tiberius dying that seemed odd to her. Her eyes scanned over the page of the family tree, a pattern standing out to her as if written in gold while useless information faded to black. Ophelia Greengrass, born 1791, 10 generations of Greengrass women prior, all dying between the ages of 18 and 27. Astoria's mother had only been 26 when she left behind 2 small children. And at 24, Astoria was already doing better than some of her ancestors. Hermione shook her head and scribbled down the pattern, but just as she finished the direct line, she noted something else. Some of the Greengrass ancestors, like Astoria, had not had children. Their deaths had come later in their lives. Some in their 30s, one witch living until 49. Those names and dates joined the list alongside the others in their own column. The curse also didn't seem to affect everyone. Some members of the family saw no effects of the curse at all, which again seemed odd. She hadn't noticed any effects from Daphne, and no one had mentioned any information to the contrary. She started poring over journals, one tradition that she was essentially thankful for that seemed to be prominent in pureblood culture as a way to pass information down to the next generation. For their part, it seemed that the Greengrass family had tried to undo the curse, but no one seemed to either be willing to write about it or know what was going on. A noise at the front door had her jumping to attention, but as the figures of Theo, Pansy, and Draco emerged, she relaxed. Theo smiled at her weakly, once again exhausted and sleep-deprived. She's stable. Daphne is with her. Hermione shook her head at the sight of all the books being unloaded onto the tables. Draco stepped around and grabbed her chin between his thumb and forefinger. Have you taken a break at all? Hermione glowered at him. I barely started. Hermione, I left last night. That was nearly 16 hours ago, Pansy groaned as she ran her fingers through her black hair. She had changed since Hermione had seen her last. When she looked around, the lamps had extinguished themselves while the sun had begun to stream through the windows at either end of the room. Oh, Hermione whispered. Apparently, she had gotten more lost in research than she had thought. I'll make coffee, Draco sighed. His disapproving tone caused a flush in her cheeks. Theo eyed the pile she had created, taking a moment to figure out her system before sending the books he had brought from the Knot Manor to the correct tables. Picking up her notes and eyeing them with a frown, his mind clearly taking over. All right, where do you want each one of us? Pansy rolled up the sleeves of her soft pink jumper. Okay, Pansy, I want you looking through the Greengrass grimoires. Anything they might have tried to end the curse. Hermione cut herself off as Theo and Pansy turned to her in confusion. What? I thought you said we couldn't cure it. Theo frowned. Hermione let her eyes fall awkwardly to the floor. Well, I didn't mean I wasn't going to at least try. Theo, are you going back to the hospital? I will soon, but I can help for a little bit, he nodded with a newfound determination. All right, can you cross-check those dates and see if any line up with any deaths in the knot line? Hermione said, returning to her seat and pulling the journal back toward her. Draco didn't say a word as he slipped into the seat next to her, placing a cup of coffee from the tray in front of her before his hand moved her thigh over the top of his own, his thumb running soothing circles into her muscles, one hand reaching out and grabbing a journal to go over himself. She looked at him for a moment, one strand of his hair falling in his face, and a surge of appreciation for the man briefly overcame her. He had not tried to stop her from doing her research, nor had he pushed her to solve this faster. He just accepted that this was how she did things and got on board, making an effort to care for her and help her in whatever way he could. A small smile tugged at her lips as she turned back to her journal and started reading again. Hey, Mai, Theo started with an uncertainty. I think I found something.